Welcome to the God Be Known podcast. I am your host, Samuel Teka. Hello, everyone. It's been 2 weeks. I have to first and foremost apologize for my absence. There has been, let's just say, a lot going on in my life. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to not get so much in detail as to what's been happening in my life, but highlight an overarching theme and then try to draw out a principle so that people could actually get value from this podcast. Let's just say that the theme of my life right now is transition. Transition physically, transitions mentally, transitions relationally, uh, translation geographically, transition in just so many different ways. And there's a lot of change. There's a lot of change happening in my life. And I will say this, that I wish that I was mentored and taught on how to handle transition and change. Usually you're taught in theory and you hear from other people what change and transition entails and the consequences of that. Consequence doesn't mean bad thing necessarily, but it's a whole nother thing hearing something and going about it in theory. And there's a whole nother experience when you're actually going through it. And I will say that I am going through it. Now, there's lessons that I've learned that I won't repeat. And there are some blessings that I have found out of the place of change and transition in my life. And I just felt that I believe a great opportunity to talk to someone out there who's listening and help as I am going through it myself. Let's start. If I were to tag a title on this, it would probably be how to transition well. And this could be in every area and every facet of your life. It doesn't necessarily need to be in one area. And so I feel like this is relatable to all people at all different ages, at all different stages of their life. But how do you transition well? I think we first have to admit that transition is uncomfortable. Let's just start there. It's uncomfortable having to change from something that you and I are so comfortable with. We're so used to the city that we live in. We're so used to the friend groups that we live in. We're so used to the churches that we live in. That we attend, right? And when God calls you out, and when he calls you to change, and quote unquote, when he calls you out of the boat and begin to walk on unfamiliar territory, begin to walk on water, that's uncomfortable. Not only is it uncomfortable, but it's scary. It is scary to walk on water. Because how many of you guys know, if we were to just take that picture of Jesus calling Peter out onto the water? Actually, no. But Jesus wasn't the one that called Peter out onto the water. Peter was actually the one that told Jesus, hey, God, if it's really you, call me out. And that in and of itself is something that I believe that a lot of us do, right? Sometimes Jesus calls us out, and then sometimes we pray to Jesus to call us out. And on whatever side of the spectrum that you're on, you and I have to know that Jesus will respond, and he'll respond in a way that's going to make that step moving forward really uncomfortable. And it's scary. The water wasn't still while the storm was happening. The water was in the midst of a storm. And so you could just imagine if Peter's going to get called out onto this water, he's not walking on pavement. He's not walking on still solid ground. No, he's going to be walking in an environment where it's unbalanced. And I just want a lot of us to know that when we go through transition, when we go through change, things are going to be unbalanced. Things are going to seem out of place. And I want everyone to know, just as I had to know, that that's okay. It's okay for things to be unbalanced. It's okay for things to be unsettled, whether that be externally or internally. And I really believe that the reason why it's okay is because Jesus, I really believe, whether you prayed for it or whether he's calling you out to be obedient to it, it's okay because number one, he's with you. Number two, he's trying to teach you something about him and also his ways that you never would have known in the previous season. Not only is he trying to teach you about him in this season, but he's also trying to teach you something about yourself. And this is probably one of the most challenging parts because anytime you step into a new season, anytime you step into something that is uncomfortable and it feels unbalanced, you are going to see new sides of you because there is pressure applied. And anytime something is uncomfortable, there's pressure. And whenever there's pressure, things are going to come out, right? I like to think of it as a pop can. And there is this machine that brings pressure down onto the pop can. And based off of that sequence of pressure happening on the pop can, slowly and surely, something out of the pop can is going to come out, right? And in the same way, that's what it's like when you're in a season where it's unfamiliar and uncomfortable, in a season of transition and change. Things are going to come out of you. Let me just practically speak here. For me, personally speaking, in this season of transition, there have been fears within me that never would have came out if it wasn't for the uncomfortable season. Never. And what God, again, was trying to teach me was that number one, he's with me in the midst of that fear. Number two, he's trying to teach me something about him and his ways in the midst of that fear, i.e., he's trying to teach me that even in the midst of my fear, he's my good shepherd, that he is my peace, right? He's my shalom. So he's trying to teach me something about that, but he's also trying to teach me something about myself that, oh, wow, I'm actually a lot more fearful than than I was just a lot more fearful than I thought. I was a lot more angry than I thought. I was a little bit more impatient than I thought. I was a little bit, and then fill in the blanks for you, right? And this is what the uncomfortable season brings. It brings pressure. And a true man's character, or a true person's character, is tested in the midst of the pressure. But not only is it tested in the midst of the pressure, but that man, that person, that woman is also being refined in the midst of the pressure. I like to refer to James chapter 1, where it talks about whatever trial that we go through. I'm paraphrasing, but just know that it's strengthening your faith. It's building perseverance in you. I believe in Romans chapter 5, I believe it talks about how suffering produces endurance, and how endurance produces character, and how character produces hope within us. And this is part of the transition. This is part of the change. So I would say, understand that it's okay. It's okay to be feeling unbalanced. It's okay to be feeling pressure. I would just give advice to people out there. Give grace to yourself. I think that's another thing that I think I missed out on. I think when I saw new sides of me that I wasn't necessarily proud of course, you feel a lot of shame about it. You see things that you don't want to see. You see things that you didn't expect to see. And you could either do one or two things, right? And it's the natural response of any human being. You could either run away from it. You could, you know, freeze in the midst of it, or, you fight it. And I found that for me, I was running away from it. I was running away from it because there was just so much shame within me. Um, I was running away from people that loved me, and I loved them, and it's because I had the shame within me. And God had to teach me through the transition. God had to teach me through the change that there's grace. There's grace available. And for anybody that's listening out there, for anybody that's watching, understand there is grace made available to you and I. There is. Grace is undeserved love, undeserved blessing. It's undeserved favor towards you. Because the reality is, God does not love us based off of how well we perform or if we don't perform at all. God loves us purely out of the goodness of who he is. And the more we could focus on the goodness of who he is, the holiness of who he is. Holiness just means the uniqueness of who he is. The way he's just so set apart that he's not like man, but he is God, and he's different. He loves different from what you have been familiar with or what you've experienced from your past. He he's patient like none other. He's long in suffering, and he's patient and he's long in suffering because he loves you, and he wants to see you repent. He wants to see you turn away. He wants to see you come back to him and be restored to him. And so I would say, just give grace to yourself. Give grace to yourself. Extend the grace God has given you to yourself. And I believe that's just one of the most uh, beautiful ways that we could really help ourselves when we go through transition and when we go through change. I would say the last thing is to not do this alone. I think for me, I had to go through a geographical change. And with a geographical change means that I had to leave what I was familiar with in terms of friendships and relationships that I have in Edmonton, Canada, and learn how to start a new community and build new friendships out in Phoenix, Arizona. And God bless, my first friend, which is Mahedet, my wife, and she has been just so amazing and so gracious during this process. And I mean, God bless her heart, babe. If you're watching this, God bless you. I love you for everything that you've done and everything that you've been with me through. So, anyways, but I remember calling my dad one day, and the first words out of his mouth, because I was expressing to him and I was vulnerable and I was crying genuinely because it was just so hard. And one of the first words that came out of his mouth was, "You're not alone, and you don't have to do it alone. That there are people around you." And I would say to the person that's listening or to the person that's watching this right now, listen, you're not alone. You're not alone. First and foremost, God is with you. He's with you. Um, there is no greater presence. There is no greater person. There is no greater who is more present than God is. And I would just say, take the time to go out for a walk, wake up in the morning, sit by yourself, and just sit in the presence of God. Sit in the nature of his goodness and his grace and his love towards you. He's present. I promise you. He's available. He's available. He's there if you're just willing to seek him out. That's number one. But number two, which is equally just as important, is the people around you. The people around you. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable around them. Stop hiding. It's something that I did. I'm just telling you my personal experience. I had to stop hiding and I had to get vulnerable. I had to hear this. I had to invite people into my vulnerability. I had to invite people into my weakness. What does that look like? Hey, I really need you right now. I'm really sad. Um, I need someone. That's what it looks like to invite people into your vulnerabilities. And I really do believe this because I remember when I did it and I realized that I wasn't alone and I started inviting people into my vulnerabilities, which is something that I'm still learning continually, is, oh my gosh, the fruit that came out of it, the sense of belonging, the sense of I'm not alone started to emerge within me. And so this is what I would just really advise people is you're not alone. Reach out, invite people into the vulnerability in that transition, in that change, whatever it may be for you, right? And I really do believe that if you just apply some of the things that I just said in the last 20 minutes, I really do believe because it's helped me and it's worked for me. And I really pray that if you apply it, it will work for you. I really do believe that. There's biblical ground, there's biblical precedent for it as well. And so I just really wanted to encourage people with that and just to let them know that I'm going through transition. You're probably going through transition. You're probably going through a change, and that's not easy. There's pressure there. It's unbalanced there. But just remember that the Lord is with you. All right. He is with you. And so I believe that's enough for me. But I just want to say this last thing. I want all my God Be Known podcast listeners and those who are on YouTube right now just to bear with me, be patient with me. As you could see, I'm in a new location. And within these next couple of months, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be moving around. And again, I can't get too much into detail about it, but there are going to be some days, some weeks. I wouldn't say consecutive weeks, but maybe one week I might miss a podcast, and maybe the week after I will post. And I really just I have to make sure that I steward and I manage myself well, and I'm making sure that I'm healthy. And I believe that if I could do that, then I could really bring my time, my attention, my energy to different things in a healthy manner as well. And so just bear with me. Again, I'm going to be committed. I'm going to be committed. And I really believe this is something that I'm called to. It's something that I believe God is really, sorry guys, there's just a hair for those that are watching on YouTube on my mic. It just flew in. But what was I saying? Yeah, I'm committed. I'm committed to this. I really believe this is something God has called me to. And so I just really wanted to make sure that I announce that. And just, yeah, I mean, if this gave you any value, share it with other people. If someone's going through a transition or a change, and they just feel like stressed all the time, and like feel under pressure, overwhelmed, some of these symptoms, send this over to them, help them out, encourage them, like the video, comment down below. Let's engage with one another. And again, I will do the best that I can to be posting every single week, but there's no guarantees as well. And so I just want to make sure that I'm out there. I'm communicating that as best as I can, just so you guys know where I'm at. And so pray for me, pray for your boy. Again, I'm fine and I'm good. There's nothing really dramatic, crazy happening in my life. But again, there's just a lot of transition and change. And so love you guys so much. I pray that you guys have a wonderful day and also a wonderful week. And remember, I say it every single week. I want you to know God, know him through the Bible, know him through his word, know him through community, and ultimately let God be known. Let God be known. So God bless you all, and ciao. Hey, Samuel Teka here again. I don't mean to bother you, but I just wanted to quickly remind you, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you doing? Subscribe right now. And listen, if you're already subscribed and you want to be notified on when the videos come out, click the bell button on the top right-hand corner of the YouTube page. And listen, I'm also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to go check that out, check out the description down below. All right, guys, have a good day.